Welcome to the Let Life Begin podcast, a teaching ministry of Dr. Philip Dunn, Senior Pastor of First Mount Juliet Church. In this podcast, Dr. Dunn will share biblical principles with real-life application. Thank you for listening today.
Welcome to the Let Life Begin podcast, and this week we're making our way through the rest of the book of 2 Samuel, or the majority of the rest of it. We actually have one chapter we won't read, and we'll capture that next week. But I wanted to connect something for us as we read through these chapters, and that is that what David has done in his sin, and what he has then planted by way of these bad decisions in the lives of his family, now will cause great harm for the rest of his days. You know, there's a lesson there that God still works in our lives. God still gives grace. God restores. God forgives. Somebody has said it this way: we can be forgiven of the choices we made, but we can't undo the consequences with the choices that were made. And we see this in the life of David, and we see it in his family. And his family is filled with strife. In a lot of ways, this is a picture of David as king who was flawed, but he is a father who is flawed. And we see his sons and his family from this point forward then, because of the failures of David as a father, do great damage to his family. And we should read carefully these chapters. At chapter 13, his son Amnon rapes his sister Tamar. I mean, it's horrible. You could read the buildup of this whole story in this moment. And David's response doesn't seem to be what you would expect. The Bible says that when David heard all this, he was furious. And Absalom never said a word to Amnon, either good or bad. He hated Amnon because he disgraced his sister Tamar. So essentially, it is the other son who's angry enough to seek revenge. David is just furious, but there's nothing else done. So you read the rest of this chapter 13, and Absalom builds up this whole story and arranges for this meeting there and the sheep shearing, and he allows all of the sons to be invited, and what happens? Well, he kills Amnon, and so there's David once again in great travail and tears, and the Bible says that after he was informed, all of the king's sons came in after he was informed that his son Amnon had been killed. He wailed loudly. The king, too, and all his attendants wept very bitterly. And after Absalom fled, went to Geshur, he stayed there 3 years. And King David longed to go to Absalom, for he was consoled concerning Amnon's death. So you want to talk about a lot of loss, a lot of heartache already in the life of David. And the Bible then tells us in a pretty extensive narrative about Absalom. Absalom seemed to be so full of gifts and potential and looks. Verse 1, chapter 14 says, Joab, remember him, son of Zeruiah, knew that the king's heart had longed for Absalom. So he builds up this whole story to try to reconcile father and son, and ultimately he does. But Absalom never truly gets over what he would have perceived his father's lack of not just empathy or sympathy towards him, but the way that he had disregarded the actions of Amnon. So we get what is referred to in the NIV translation in chapter 15. The heading of the passage says Absalom's conspiracy. So he certainly conspires. And well, what is he conspiring? Well, he wants to take the throne. And in great humiliation, now we find the son of David, Absalom, turning on him and threatening his very life. And David flees the city of Jerusalem. Like, this is a story that is full of insight and meaning. David was humbled enough at this point in his life that he knew that what the prophet had told him is true, that these things that would then unfold before us were going to happen, and they in fact happened. Even to the extent that Absalom there upon the rooftop has relations with the concubines of David. He totally humiliates his father. David is left with only the help of God. He faces curses on his way out. His entrusted advisor, Ahithophel, turns on him, and he loses so much of allegiances that he had to the allegiance now of his advisors to Absalom. Okay, so you read through this, chapter 17, ultimately Absalom dies, and it's another horrible moment, another moment of mourning. It's the famous scene which after Absalom dies, of course, Joab is behind all of this. Remember Joab. The king was shaken. He went up to the room over the gateway and he wept. And as he went, he said, Oh, my son Absalom. My son Absalom. If only I had died instead of you, oh Absalom, my son, my son. And the Bible says that Joab was told the king is weeping and mourning, and essentially Joab goes to confront the king and says, go out and encourage your men. I swear by the Lord that if you don't go out, not a man will be left with you by nightfall. And this will be worse for you than all of the calamities that have come on you from your youth until now. So David got up, he took a seat in the gateway. The men were told the king is sitting in the gateway, and they all came before him. So David has returned to Jerusalem. He has carried with him the despondency of the death of yet another son. And then there is, in this return, a reordering of some of the events that had transpired, even of all things, a miscommunication, it seems, between Mephibosheth and his servant there, and Shimei, who had cursed him. And David is full of great restraint. He seems to be at peace that these things were from God, but yet what a tragedy had struck his family. And you'll find that there was Sheba, you'll read this, rebels against David, and then he has all of these wars. And what began before all of this as a season of peace, when God had given him peace with all of his enemies, now at every side for the rest of David's life, his life will be a life of fighting and difficulty. This week, you'll read several Psalms. One of the Psalms we find in Psalm 18 is lifted right out of 2 Samuel chapter 22. In the midst of all of this, the war, the battles, all of the heartache, all of the betrayal, all the intrigue, the humiliation, David sang to the Lord the words of this song when the Lord delivered him from the hand of all of his enemies and from the hand of Saul. He said, "The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer." Here are some highlights of some of the things he said. "You, Lord, are my lamp. The Lord turns my darkness into light. As for God, his way is perfect. The Lord's word is flawless. He shields all who take refuge in him. It is God who arms me with strength and keeps my way secure. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer, and he causes me to stand on the heights." That's repeated in Psalm 18. It's also found in Habakkuk chapter 3. That picture of a deer just kind of fleeing there as if on air, sailing, as it were, upon the rocks. He said, "God has trained my hands for battle. My arms can bend a bow of bronze. You make your saving help my shield. Your help has made me great." You know, David knew he needed the Lord, and God was faithful, and the Lord was with him. And among his last words that David spoke in 2 Samuel chapter 23, is a word that lifts up the God of Israel. He said, "The God of Israel spoke. The rock of Israel said to me, when one rules over people in righteousness, when he rules in the fear of God, he's like the light of morning at sunrise on a cloudless morning, like the brightness of rain that brings grass from the earth. If my house were not right with God, surely he would not have made with me an everlasting covenant." And he never forgot God's grace. Why was David a man after God's own heart? Because he kept coming back to the heart of God. And that's David and all of his sinfulness, all of his humanity, all of his weaknesses as a father, all of the bad decisions he has made. He was a man who, overall, in the whole score of his life, was a person whose heart tilted towards the things of God. We get the depths of his humanity and the emotion and the words given to us in the Psalms read these stories slowly through the lens of a real person, a real husband, a real dad, and a real warrior, a real leader, and how ultimately he just kept coming back to his need for God. And at the end of the day, it was the faithfulness of God that sustained him. It is the faithfulness of God that sustains us as his people. Let us turn to the Lord. Make Psalm 18 and some of these other Psalms a matter of prayer this week. Let the word come alive in your heart. And Lord willing, I'll see you back next week.
Thank you for listening to the Let Life Begin podcast with Dr. Dunn. For more content, follow us on social media platforms and on Spotify. Thank you again for listening.